Good morning and welcome to day 23 of the Coronavirus Diaries from me, Jonathan King, under the name Geriatric 1944. The year I was born, I'm now 75. A couple of things that have come up over the last few diaries. I mentioned Hillsborough in the last diary and immediately provoked a storm of hatred from Scousers. I love Scousers, by the way, but from Scousers who said, it's the day coming up for the anniversary of Hillsborough and you're so disrespectful of the grieving families and all that. Not at all. I actually thought the people who fought for the truth for Hillsborough, the families and the relatives and the friends, are terrific people. What they did was they proved that the police lie about anything whenever they can, and it was proved in court, and good for them. So I'm 100% behind them. I think they did a fantastic job. They stuck to their guns and they didn't move. But these are the kind of things, I think if you say something like this, a lot of people who only can see one path and can only walk down one road are absolutely unable to see further than that one road. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, but it was an interesting thing. The other point I wanted to make was about sales. Somebody commented when I talked about Saccharin that we did, I think, 500,000 vinyl copies as a single. And then I said that the track actually sold 2 million copies. What one tends to forget is that in the 70s and 80s, the biggest source of sales, of vinyl sales, were compilation albums. These were put together all over the world. They usually included all the hits from different countries and so on. Britain, of course, had the biggest and most successful catchment because at that time we really did rule the world of music. So there were compilations containing top 50 hits all over the world. They'd have, the greatest hits of 1971 or whatever, and in it would be the biggest selling hits in England or in the UK at that time, but they would sell all over the world. So if you were living in Singapore or Alaska or Peru, there would be a local edition out and it would always sell 100,000 or 50,000 copies. So that's where most of the sales came. Of course, actually making a great deal less money than the single sales, but still making your overall sales massive. So whereas we sold 500,000 singles, we probably sold 2 million copies of the track itself in various forms. I want to talk about a couple of television programmes that were on last night. Quiz, which is still ongoing. I'm really into this because my dear friend Bob Woffenden, who wrote a fantastic book on the 10 worst miscarriages of justice in the last 30 years, called the Nicholas Cases, of which my case is one, and please do get hold of the book and read it. But he was researching this whole Who Wants to Be a Millionaire coughing major scandal. He wrote a great book called Bad Show, on which all the subsequent plays and so on were based. And I hope is credited. You can never see it in the final credits because they whisk past so quickly, but he deserves to be credited because he did an enormous amount on that. It's a great show. It was a great stage show. I went to see it in Chichester, and it was terrific. Interestingly, in the first half, they got the audience to vote whether they thought the major was guilty or not, and after the second half, to vote again. And every time it was completely different. The first half was one way and the second half was the other way. I'm not going to tell you which way because tonight is the finale of it. And believe me, it's well worth watching. If for nothing else, Michael Sheen's voice of Chris Tarrant is just stunning. The other TV show was the one about the girl who claimed to have been raped in Cyprus by 12 Israeli boys, or about 12 Israeli boys, we see, and then retracted her statement and then was found guilty of lying or basically wasting police time or attempting to pervert the course of justice or some such thing. And luckily escaped without too much time in a jail, poor girl, but even so. the uproar that came was incredible. Now, at the time I said, and I was heavily quoted in the newspapers, at the time I said, hey, look, this girl is behaving like an awful lot of teenagers do behave. She was 18 or 19 at the time. They get incredibly drunk. They're quite prepared to sleep with all sorts of handsome guys. They love the idea of a holiday romance and all the rest of it. And the thin line between that and then crossing over into attempted rape or rape is often assumed to have been crossed over, whereas actually a lot of it can be misunderstandings, too much alcohol consumed, too much drugs consumed. Anyway, I said that at the time, but last night they had a documentary on it. And in the documentary, ITV put it on at night, they didn't ask two vital questions. What we've all heard on the internet, because of course these days the internet is a great source of information, was that the girl actually had sex with this boy who she'd had sex with several times, an Israeli lad of 17 or 18, who she obviously fancied like mad, but that the other guy that she had consensual sex with was a 15-year-old, obviously way below the age of consent. Well, the age of consent here in the UK is 16. In Cyprus, actually, it's 17. And she actually said she was raped by about 12 people. Well, did she have sex with a 15-year-old? If she did she then realise she'd been filmed doing it? And if she did realise she'd been filmed doing it, was it then that she suddenly came up with the rape allegations to get out of the incredibly awkward situation of being called a paedophile? And you know what the British media makes of people who are paedophiles, be they male or female, holidaying 18-year-old girls or elderly old queens. Anyway, they never asked those questions. So basically, it was actually a one-sided programme which didn't get to the bottom of the whole thing. I have no idea what happened there. I don't know whether she was raped or not, but there were questions that were not asked that really should have been asked if it was going to be a balanced view. You'll notice that Denmark are now relaxing restrictions after they've had their restrictions, self-isolation, which to me is common sense. To me, any intelligent human being, if they get a bad cold or flu, self-isolates because they don't want to go out and give it to other people. I can't understand why people don't say that is standard normal behaviour. It's not standard normal behaviour to shut the entire globe economy down. It's standard normal behaviour if you get symptoms of a cold or flu, or these days coronavirus, you stay in, you don't mix with other people, you don't give it to other people, you get over it. Anyway, Denmark is now relaxing restrictions. I noticed with amusement their death toll in Denmark has been 260 people. Is this a plague? Is this the end of the world? Excuse me, 260 people dying is very sad for those who died, or rather their relatives and their friends, but it really isn't a plague, and it really isn't something we should be taking so incredibly seriously. This is going on all over the world now. Austria relaxing their things, and you see all different kind of death rates because, of course, the way people calculate figures is way out in cloud nine. And the media, of course, loves to inflate everything. That's all they do all the time, exaggerate and inflate as much as possible. The actual reality is some countries, like take Germany, the death rate is miniature. Other countries, take Italy, the death rate is enormous. Well, I reckon it's calculating the figures in a different way. I still say this is all a huge media con, a media overhype. What I reckon will be the big test is perhaps in a week or 2 weeks' time that we look at those Nightingale hospitals that have been built at enormous expense, and I have to say brilliantly efficiently by the army and the NHS and everything else, which the one in London here, we can take 4,000 people, right? Now, I reckon in about a week or so, we take a look at that hospital. Are the 4,000 people in those beds on all those 4,000 ventilators? Was it needed? Or, as I suspect we'll see, are there about 110 beds filled and about 3,812 or whatever empty beds, unused ventilators? Which way will it go? We can only say, let's wait and see. But I suspect the second. We'll have to wait and see. Is this really a pandemic? Or is it, as I think, a panic-demic, where the media has taken it over and overinflated it and meant that people overreact? I don't think we should be not self-isolating. I don't think we should be doing what we do at the other extreme, ruining the world's economy. I think the balance is somewhere in between. Treat it as we these days treat flu. Try and find a vaccine as fast as possible. Treat the vulnerable and the elderly and the people who are liable to die as a result of it far better. Donate all the money that's being made to build these huge hospitals and do all these incredible things and cancel sporting events and everything else. Don't make that money into treating the people who get the very serious symptoms and sometimes are close to death. But the rest of the world should have gone on as normal and should now go on as normal. If you disagree, feel free to contact me and let me know. Tomorrow, I'll see you for day 24. Bye-bye.